What's up, guys? Jordan from Tin Pillar back here with another movie review. This week, I'm going to be doing a 3-part Rob Reiner directed film review. So, I'm going to be doing Stand By Me, This Is Spinal Tap, and When Harry Met Sally. I don't know why I decided to go on a binge of Rob Reiner, but hey, great director from the 80s, 70s, 80s. Definitely the 80s. Might have had some in the 70s. But he's definitely famous in the 80s. Anyway, Rob Reiner binge. Really good director. He's not underrated. I mean, people know his movies, but I don't think a lot of people realize that Rob Reiner directed them. Does that make sense? I don't know. Because he's got some classics. He did Princess Bride, This Is Spinal Tap. I mean, the ones I watched, Stand By Me. Anyway, Rob Reiner's the man. Here's 3 of his movies. Here are 3 reviews from me. Roll it! Okay, so the one I think I'm going to start with is going to be When Harry Met Sally. It was the one I just recently watched. It was a few weeks ago. It was the last one I watched. And I really liked it. This is a really good movie. I think something interesting to note about it is that Rob Reiner, he does direct most of his movies, but he doesn't usually write them. I think he helps with the screenplay, but he's not so much a writer. He's more of a director. I feel like it's always been a thing of having writer-directors. They do both, but I feel like older, a little bit further back, maybe more close to the 80s and further on, there was a lot of just directors and non-writers. I thought that was interesting. I feel like you don't see that as much now. I mean, there's definitely still some, but I feel like it's not as popular to not write what you direct. I think that's interesting. I don't know when that kind of turned or if that really had a turn, but I don't have much to say about When Harry Met Sally. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's anything special. I mean, I think to a lot of people it might be, but for me, I don't know, it was a good movie. I liked it. A few things that I noted, there was a really cool dancing shot of both of them where the camera stays still and they just rotate around in 360 and all you see is a close-up on their face. And I thought it was a really cool way to show just thought process through a person, because as they're rotating in this quick little dance shot, their faces go from excited to nervous to confused, and both of them have these complete thought processes going through their head. No dialogue is said, but we can see something's going on inside their head. I think there's something to be said with some good acting on being able to see what a character is thinking. Not just what they say, not just what they do, but if you can see what they're thinking, I think you've really got a good actor, somebody that's really giving a good performance. I kind of relate it to a book. A lot of people say that they like books and how you can read what they're thinking. It says what they're thinking, and I've always just kind of been a good actor should be able to do that as well. I feel like that's something that Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan did really well in this movie. Another thing that I noted was just the fact that I think there's tons of conversations in this movie that happens just through a look between Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. Literally just a look. You can see one gives the other a look, and a whole conversation was just said without any words actually being said through dialogue. That was probably my favorite part. To talk about that dancing shot and how I can see what those characters are thinking, and just the way that they're able to have these conversations literally just through eye contact, I think was my favorite part about the movie. It's a whole story on its own that the dialogue doesn't even tell. It's all just through the acting. It's all just through the eyes. It's really good. That's probably my favorite part about the movie. Another thing, it kind of falls in the theme here of why I like this movie, but there's a shot, there's a couple montages in this movie, but the one I remember specifically is when they're kind of getting to know each other more. It looks like they're kind of going to start dating more, and they go to a Chinese restaurant, and it's just a wide shot of them outside, or we're outside, as if we're just kind of someone passing by the restaurant, and they're at a table eating, and we know beforehand that Meg Ryan has complicated orders. That's kind of one of her character traits. But it was just interesting because there's no dialogue said, but we can totally see this scene happening, unfolding before us about Billy Crystal giving his order, and he's being direct and he knows what he wants, and then Meg Ryan is being super specific, and the waiter and Billy Crystal just kind of look at each other like, are you serious? It's something small, and I just kind of thought of it. I love how wide the shot is because, like I said, it's as if you're just walking by and you see that. I think it's interesting. You don't have to have seen the movie to know exactly what is going on by just peeking in on their table there. I don't know, something interesting. And another thing that's non-verbal is just kind of shown, and I think there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's pretty good like that. So if I had to rate When Harry Met Sally, I'd probably say like 7 out of 10. Yeah, I think so. Good movie. A lot of stuff going on, kind of in between the lines. And then also the lines are really good too. I mean, it's a good script. It's all talking. I love good dialogue, so good movie. 7 out of 10, but nothing that I'd probably write home about. Okay, the next one I've got to talk about. I mean, this is easily Rob Reiner at his funniest, but this is Spinal Tap is a work of genius as far as comedy goes. I mean, if you can't laugh at this, you know what I'm saying?
Totally, dude.
Anyway, I think if you watch this, you're going to laugh. There's something in it for everybody that would think it's funny. It's got to be. Really, it's just a bunch of small stuff that's funny that I'm going to talk about. It's kind of one of those things that's just details. So I'm going to just bring up a few things that I thought were funny. So the first thing that I think is pretty great is just that Rob Reiner is the director in the movie. So he's the director of the movie, but he's also the director of the documentary he's making. So it's perfect, and he's so funny. I didn't even know Rob Reiner was funny, but this movie definitely proves that he is. So props to him. There's some funny lines. One of them, they call themselves one of England's loudest bands, not best bands, but loudest. So and they're proud of that, and that's funny. Okay, probably one of my favorite reoccurring bits. Definitely. No, my favorite reoccurring bit was all the past drummers dying. I'm a drummer myself, and I just thought this was absolutely hilarious. It comes out of left field completely, and it makes zero sense, but nothing has to make sense in this movie. That's why it's funny. But all the drummers basically have died in freak accidents, and even the current drummer of the band dies later in the movie, and they replace him the next shot. It's hilarious. That's a perfect bit. Makes no sense. Doesn't have to make sense. Very funny. So I think one of my favorite lines, if it's not the best line, is they're talking about the album cover that is very sexual, like beyond explicit sexual, and the manager says that, like, you know, we can't publish this. The label said we can't publish this. It's sexist. And then the guitar player, or the lead singer, I can't remember who it is, but he goes, "Oh, what's wrong with being sexy?" I mean, just play on words, hilarious, stupid, funny, moving on. Okay, so probably the 3 obvious, funniest bits, I would say, have to be the fact that they can't find the stage. That is hilarious. There's always shots in, like, music movies where, you know, they're walking up the stage and going backstage and getting up to the stage and the crowd's roaring, and we have that, but they can't find the stage, and it's a complete train wreck backstage. That's hilarious. The cocoon's malfunctioning, absolute classic. 2 of them are able to get out of their cocoons. The bass player stays in, can't get out, and as soon as they go back in, he's able to get out. Come on. Comedy. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much wrapped up on this one. I think my final thing I would say about this movie, and I think my favorite scene, probably hardest I laughed and favorite scene, it's stupid, but there's a scene where the guitarist is talking about the bread, the size of the bread, and he's complaining that the bread is too small to fit the meat. You know, and he's saying, I have this big deli meat, and if I fold the bread, it breaks. It breaks, and then look at all this meat hanging outside the bread. You kind of just have to see it for it to really, I think, be funny. But it was I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. It's something as dumb as bread that they find a way to make funny. I'm obsessed. I love it. The last thing I have to say is I think this is a perfect comedy. It has just enough plot for me to care, and all sorts of laughs all over the place. Can't go wrong. I think if I had to rate this one, probably like a 9 out of 10. I don't think it's perfect, you know, it's funny, but 9 out of 10. Pretty solid. Very funny. The last one that I'm going to talk about has just always been a personal favorite of mine. I feel like a movie that was always on TV. It was a movie that I watched growing up. You know, and just every time it came on, I just couldn't help but watch. But it's the classic Go on a Journey movie, Stand By Me. This is just one of my personal favorites. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I don't, but it's one of those things that's just like sentimental. Just a fan favorite for me. It's always in my top ranked movies. I love it a lot. I think Rob Reiner and Stephen King is a perfect combination, and then obviously River Phoenix. and Will Wheaton and the rest of the cast are just great, especially as child actors. I mean, come on. You gotta love it. You gotta give it to them. Very good. Also, the thing about Stand By Me, on why I like it so much, is it definitely gave me inspiration to shoot my short film that I directed, Storage Unit, which if you haven't seen that, the link will be in the description. But basically just the idea of a dead body, of a dead body being in a film, I think is really interesting. And it's such a cool reveal. The whole story, the whole plot is about going to see this dead body and Stand By Me. But that's not what the story is about at all. And that's something I really like. I love that simplicity of traveling to go see something and getting to do whatever you want on the way there. Excellent. Great stuff. So to get into some specifics of the movie, I think I watched, I have the DVD of it, and I watched like a BTS thing. It was kind of like a little documentary about the making of the movie. And something I noticed this time, before I actually watched the BTS, but I noticed it this time when I rewatched it, the bully, Kiefer Sutherland, he takes Gordy's hat, and he doesn't ever give it back to him. And I noticed that this time, and then it came up in the documentary, and basically Will Wheaton was like, why I don't ever get my hat back? What's the point? Or how do I not ever get my hat back? And Rob Reiner just told him he threw that hat away as soon as he turned the corner, right? And Kiefer Sutherland kind of asked him the same thing, what should I do with the hat? Because my first instinct was to put it on. But Rob Reiner said, no, your character wouldn't put it on because he wouldn't want to mess up his hair. So it's just really cool, like character detail and character motivation. A hat, as it's so sentimental to Gordy. That hat is his brother's hat, and it means the world to him. But it's literally just nothing to the bully. I can't remember his name, but Kiefer Sutherland's character. But I just thought that was cool, and it was something I noticed this time, and then they brought up, and I was like, oh, that's. I love that they set it up with Teddy earlier, where he wants to do a train dodge. It seems like nothing, it just kind of seems random at the time, but it clearly sets up this epic scene of an actual train dodge. And then, of course, he delivers the line after, epic train dodge, That's just great. It's my favorite scene. I love Vern's face as they're running from the train. It's priceless. Gordy and Vern running off the train to literally dodge it it's one of my favorites of all time. It's hilarious. I think another thing to note that I feel like is really hit or miss for a lot of people that I think is hilarious is the Lardass scene. The weird cutaway that Gordy tells, and the idea that he's like a writer, is literally just this whole. It's basically a short film in this movie about Lardass, and I think it's funny. I think it's cool that he put it in there. I love when movies like go off the rails a little bit, and it definitely does there for literally a short film, and it has its own beginning, middle, and end, and I think that's an interesting thing to put in the movie, and I love that he did. Probably the last thing that I have to say about Stand By Me really is just I love like just the little discussions that go on throughout. Like when they're at the campfire, they're talking like what the hell is Goofy? If Mickey's a mouse and Pluto's a dog, like what the hell is Goofy? Just a bunch of small just banter. I mean that's great. You always want to put that in movies, and when it hits and it feels natural, it's so fun. It's one of the best parts of cinema for sure. I think probably my favorite line is when they're walking down the train tracks after their first night. It's in the morning and they're eating chocolate bars or something, and Vern says, "Hey Gordy, why didn't you get like breakfast stuff? Like Twinkies, Pez, and root beer." I mean, a perfect breakfast of champions for a kid, if you ask me. But yeah, I always thought that line was funny. It's really just a throwaway line, just to give a little character background for Vern, but it's funny. They're kids, and it's great. It reminds you of being a child, and it's hilarious. The last thing I have to say about Stand By Me is the quote. And at the end of the movie, he says, "Friends come in and out of your life, and at some point just become another face on the hallway." It's an interesting line. It's basically what the film is about, or one of the things that the film is about. But, something as those friend group, as close as they got on that trip, they still kind of lose contact. It just makes you think like, what really do you have to go through with a friend to where it will stick forever? And to rate Stand By Me, I've got to give this a 10 out of 10. I'm not saying that it's a perfect movie by my rating, but it's one of my favorites. I think it's good enough to be that good, and I gotta give it to it. 10 out of 10. It's definitely my favorite Rob Reiner movie. One of my favorites of all time. A great film. If you haven't seen these three, go check them out, and then rewatch this, and then comment, and I will respond to you about what you thought of the movies. I promise I will. So do that. This has been a 3-part movie review. Don't use that. That was dumb. Thanks for watching my 3-part movie review of Rob Reiner's 3 classic cinema pieces. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, comment, share this. Any sort of engagement we can get really helps out with these videos, guys. We really appreciate any sort of support that you can give us here at 10 Pillar. I thank you for your time. Go watch his movies, and we appreciate you.
Dude,